Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Social Studies class. Of course, you know this is your teacher, Mr. Clarke. Okay, I am a bit late with this video, but please accept my apology. Alright, I did promise you that I would do another video on regional integration. So for today's class, I am going to be looking at the factors that hinders regional integration, and I am also going to try and run through the benefits of regional integration for you, right? So we're looking at the barriers to regional integration, and we're also looking at the benefits of regional integration. Now, as I said before, I am just going to run through some of the factors that hinders regional integration. Right now, let me just break down this topic for you. When we speak about factors that hinders regional integration, right, or the barriers to regional integration, we're really talking about those things, those factors that make regional integration difficult, right? Remember now that regional integration is the coming together of countries in a region. So what are some of the things that makes it difficult for countries to come together? What are some of those factors that are considered to be barriers, right? Obstacles, something that makes a process difficult. Alright, so some of the factors that I have listed here are: number 1, absence of a common development strategy. 2, competition among Caribbean countries. 3, different stages of growth and development. 4, conflict between local and regional demands. 5, lack of diversification in production. And 6, absence of a common currency. Alright, so these are some of the factors that are considered to be hindrances, barriers to regional integration, right? And sometimes CXC just ask you to list them or state them, right? So if the question just asks you to list or state, you can just write them just as they are right now, right? But sometimes too, they ask you to explain the factors, explain 1 or 2 factors that may be barriers to regional integration, right? Factors that make regional integration difficult, right? So with that said, I am just going to go ahead and explain these factors for you. Alright, so when we speak about absence of a common development strategy, what we're really saying here is that this is a barrier because each individual country within the Caribbean or within CARICOM, they may have a different development strategy, right? So different governments will have different plans for their country, right? So one country, for example, may choose to use tourism as their main income earner in developing the nation, while another country may choose agriculture, right? So those 2 countries, it will be difficult for them to work together in terms of integrating, because both countries are using different development strategies, right? So right across the Caribbean, you will find that different countries will use different development strategies to develop their individual countries, right? Some countries may choose to use manufacturing, some countries may choose to use taxation, some countries may choose to use tourism, as I mentioned earlier, agriculture, you know, different strategies in developing the individual nations. So that in itself will make it difficult for countries to work together, right? So that's the first barrier to regional integration. Now, the second barrier to regional integration is that there is competition among Caribbean countries. Right now, as I mentioned competition, I'm thinking about the Olympics first of all. The Olympics is just around the corner, and what you will find is that countries within the Caribbean will be competing against each other, right? So for example, Shelley and Fraser Price from Jamaica will run against Kelly and Baptiste from Trinidad and Tobago. They're not going to be competing as a team. They will be competing against each other. So that is an example of a type of competition against each other, right? And sometimes too, they compete against each other to attract overseas investors, right? So if there's somebody, for example, in America that wants to invest in the Caribbean, you will find that each Caribbean country will try to offer the most attractive package to that investor, right? So that the investor will choose their country to invest in. So that is competition against each other. So Jamaica, for example, might say, all right, we are willing to negotiate with this investor and offer them a 70-30 package, right? In the sense that the investor will get 70% of the profit when the business makes a profit, and Jamaica will take 30. Another country will probably say that, you know, we are going to give you 80% of your profit, and then we will take 20. Now, if that sort of competition exists, then the investor will choose the country that is offering them the most, right? So once there's competition among Caribbean countries, then it is always going to be difficult for them to work together, right? So competition among Caribbean countries is a barrier to regional integration. All right, so the third barrier now, different stages of growth and development. Of course, we know that within the Caribbean, even though the Caribbean consists of mostly small countries, or all small countries, right? Some countries are bigger than some in terms of the resources that are available, right? So some countries have more resources than some, and because of this now, some countries are ahead of other countries as it relates to growth and development, right? So when a country is or when countries are at different stages of growth and development, it kind of makes it difficult for them to work together because they're not on the same level, right? So what you need is not necessarily what I will need, because you and I are not necessarily on the same level, right? So you may need to increase taxation in your country in order to facilitate growth and development, while I may not find it necessary to increase taxation, because we're at different stages of growth and development. So that will make it difficult for countries to work together once they are at different stages of growth and development. All right, so we move on to our next point. Conflict between local and regional demands. Now, what this means is that there will be times when the governments, the individual governments, will want to put country over region, right? So there are going to be times when you have to put your country first instead of your region. Now, the whole concept of regional integration is basically for you to focus on regional development, right? But there are going to be times when you just have to put the interest of your country over the interest of the region. Take, for example, in athletics again, Jamaica produces outstanding athletes, right? Now, when it comes to precious resources, countries are not willing to share these resources with other Caribbean countries, right? Because if you notice, even in football, the countries compete as individual nations from the Caribbean. The Caribbean countries, they compete as individual nations, right? Because Trinidad might think that, you know, their football team is strong enough to compete against the other big countries across the world. Jamaica might think the same thing. St. Lucia might think the same thing. The individual countries within the Caribbean, they choose not to integrate when it comes to certain areas, right? But when it comes to cricket now, we realize that, you know, if we should compete against the bigger nations as individual countries, we are not strong enough. So we merge our team, right? We come together to form the West Indies cricket team, a regional team, right? And we play against South Africa, England, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, and those bigger countries, right? However, there are going to be times when, you know, the people of the individual countries are not going to be willing to share their precious resources with their Caribbean neighbors, right? So there's usually the conflicts between local demands and regional demands. What is best for your country as opposed to what is best for the region. All right, so that in itself is a barrier to regional integration. Lack of diversification in production, right? Now, I think that I would have explained this in another video, but I'm going to go ahead and do so again. Alright, so lack of diversification in production. What this means is that the countries produce similar goods, right? Now, if the countries within the Caribbean produce similar goods, then this is going to prove to be a barrier to regional integration, because it is going to basically affect trading, right? It would make no sense for us to trade goods if we produce the same goods, right? So trading would be affected if we produce similar goods. So diversification here means variety. So what I'm saying is that there is a lack of variety in production, in the goods that are produced, right? So if there's a lack of variety, then it is going to prove to be a barrier to regional integration, because you want to exchange things with people that don't have the same thing that you have, right? So if all of us produce sugarcane, for example, then trading would make no sense right there, right? I would want to trade with somebody that have rice or somebody that has flour. So when I give them sugar, they can give me flour or they can give me rice. But if all of us have sugar, then trading would really not make any sense. Alright, and the final point in terms of the barriers to regional integration is that there is the absence of a common currency, right? What this means is that there is no regional currency. Most Caribbean countries have their local currency, right? You have the Jamaican dollar, you have the Trinidadian dollar, you have the Barbadian dollar, the Bajan dollar, and some countries like Trinidad also use US currency as well. But most countries have their own local currency, and because of this now, it makes it kind of difficult for countries to work together, because each currency carries a different value. So basically it affects fluency in integration, right? It will cause some amount of discrepancies where exchanging of goods and services are concerned, right? So absence of a common currency, the ideal thing would be to have a Caribbean dollar, right? So if there's a Caribbean dollar that all Caribbean countries use, then it would make it easier for regional integration, right? So these are some of the hindrances, the barriers to regional integration. However, despite these barriers, regional integration has been largely successful, and there are many benefits to regional integration. So we are going to go ahead now and look at some of those benefits to regional integration. Alright, first of all, regional integration will result in the reduction in unemployment levels, right? So unemployment is likely to be reduced because of regional integration. When countries come together, they make themselves bigger, right? So when the Caribbean countries come together, when they pool their resources together, they offer more opportunities for persons, right? So for example, so what I'm saying here is that individual countries by themselves, they lack the necessary resources. They are unable to provide adequate or enough employment opportunities for their citizens, right? But when they pool their resources together, when they integrate, if persons in Jamaica cannot find a job, for example, they can always look elsewhere within the Caribbean, right? So persons in Jamaica can look to Trinidad, they can look to Barbados, St. Lucia, Grenada, and any country within the Caribbean to find a job if they are unable to find one in their own country, right? So that in itself will reduce unemployment within the individual countries. Another way in which regional integration may reduce unemployment is that the countries from free trade will save money, right? Because free trade is really when you relax the barriers to trade. So the money that you would normally be spending on tariff or to get a license to trade, you can use that money to increase production in your own country, right? Now, when you increase production, you are now able to hire more people, right? So as a local producer then, if I am able to produce more goods because I'm not spending on the barriers to trade, there's no quota to limit me to the amount that I can import or produce. then I can use the money that I'm saving to produce more goods. And when I'm producing more goods, I'm going to want more people to work for me, right? So that in itself is creating more jobs among Caribbean people. Another benefit is that, regional integration is likely to result in the improvements in the quality of life, right? Because once people are able to find jobs for themselves, then they will be able to provide for their families, and they will be better able to, afford certain amenities, right? So that in itself means that your lifestyle or the quality of life would have been improved among individual persons within the Caribbean. Another benefit is that, regional integration will mean that there will be a better response to the implications of globalization and trade liberalization. Right now, basically, as I explained to you in the last class, globalization and trade liberalization basically affects the individual countries in the sense that the local producers within individual countries will be affected due to the fact that persons are now free to purchase things from outside of the region, right? Because the world is now a global village, and you can stay within the comfort of your home and purchase things that you need from as far as China or England or America, right? Now, if these countries continue to offer better things to the Caribbean people are always going to buy things from them, right? But regional integration, now what it does is that it develops the quality of the products or the goods that are produced within the region, because persons are coming together, sharing ideas, sharing resources, and because of these sharing of resources and ideas, now the quality of goods may be developed, and the people will no longer have to purchase things from outside the region. People can now support their local producers, right? So regional integration, as I said, the benefit is that it will be a better response to globalization and trade liberalization. All right, so the final benefit that I want to go through with you is that there will also be the free movement of goods, labor, and capital within the region, right? Because one of the key things about regional integration is that it emphasizes free trade, right? So goods and services may be moved about freely within the region. Now, as I said before, once you are able to move goods and service freely across countries within the Caribbean, you are going to reduce the need for foreign experts to come into the Caribbean. You are also going to be saving money, so you are able to increase production, and by increasing production, you are able to employ more people, right? So that is where we're going to stop for today's lesson. I really hope that you would have learned something from today's class, and I will see you in the next class.